The courtroom of Westbridge County Courthouse carried the steady hum of routine justice. It was just past 10 in the morning, and sunlight filtered through tall rectangular windows, casting pale stripes across polished wooden benches. Lawyers shuffled paperwork. A clerk typed quietly near the judge's bench. The gallery held a small audience, family members, observers, and a few individuals waiting for unrelated hearings. Officer Grant Cole stood near the witness stand in full uniform, posture straight, chin slightly raised. He had testified dozens of times before. Courtrooms were familiar territory-controlled environments where his word carried weight. His badge gleamed under the overhead lights as he answered routine questions about a minor retail theft case from the previous week. "Yes, Your Honor," Cole said confidently. The suspect attempted to exit the store without rendering payment. His voice was steady, measured, practiced. The prosecutor nodded, satisfied. The defense attorney scribbled notes, but offered no immediate challenge. From the third row of the gallery, a man sat quietly with a small leather notebook resting on his knee. His name was Marcus Bennett. He was dressed neatly dark blazer, pressed shirt, simple tie. He didn't look anxious or restless like some observers. He looked focused. Marcus wrote something down. Cole noticed. At first, it was nothing more than a glance. Courtrooms were public spaces. People took notes. But something about the steady rhythm of Marcus's pen began to irritate him. Every time Cole answered a question, the man's pen moved. Cole shifted slightly, adjusting his stance. His eyes returned to the prosecutor, but a subtle awareness lingered. The defense attorney rose for cross-examination. "Officer Cole, did you personally witness my client conceal merchandise?" Cole answered firmly, "Yes." The defense attorney paused. "From what distance?" "Approximately 15 feet. Marcus's pen moved again. Cole's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The courtroom remained calm, but Cole felt a quiet undercurrent building an irritation he couldn't quite justify. It wasn't what Marcus was doing. It was how he was doing it. Calm, observant, unbothered. When cross-examination ended, the judge adjusted her glasses. "Officer Cole, you may step down." Cole nodded respectfully and turned from the stand. As he walked past the gallery toward the exit aisle, he slowed slightly near Marcus's brow. Just for a second. Their eyes met. Marcus didn't look away. He didn't smile or challenge. He simply held the look steady, neutral, unreadable. Then he returned to his notes. It was subtle, almost invisible. But something about that exchange unsettled Cole. He wasn't used to being studied. He was used to being deferred to. Cole moved toward the back wall of the courtroom, standing with his arms folded as the next witness was called. He told himself it was nothing, just another hearing, another face in the crowd. But when he glanced back toward the third row, Marcus was still writing, still observing, and for reasons he couldn't yet explain, Officer Grant Cole began to feel as though the roles inside that courtroom were not as clearly defined as he preferred. The hearing continued. Routine, orderly, controlled. Yet, beneath the calm surface, something had shifted, and Officer Cole had felt it first. The hearing moved forward, but Officer Grant Cole's focus no longer felt steady. He stood near the back of the courtroom, arms folded, watching as the next witness was sworn in. The judge maintained her usual rhythm, measured, composed, procedural. The attorneys shifted through their arguments. Everything appeared ordinary. Except for the man in the third row. Marcus Bennett had not changed posture. His notebook remained open. His pen moved in quiet, deliberate strokes. He wasn't whispering to anyone. He wasn't reacting emotionally. He simply observed. Cole told himself to ignore it. Public courtroom. Open hearing. Nothing unusual. But each time he glanced toward the gallery, Marcus's attention seemed anchored not to the defendant, not to the judge, but to him. It felt deliberate. Cole exhaled slowly and stepped toward the side exit near the benches. As he passed again behind the third row, he slowed just enough to speak. "You with the notebook," Cole said quietly but firmly. "What are you writing?" Several heads turned. The defense attorney paused mid-sentence. Marcus looked up calmly. "I'm taking notes." "On what?" Cole pressed. "The proceedings," Marcus replied evenly. Cole's tone sharpened slightly. "Are you affiliated with this case?" "No." "Then why are you documenting it?" Marcus held his gaze. It's a public hearing. A few subtle murmurs rippled through the gallery. The judge looked up from the bench. Officer Cole, is there an issue? Cole straightened. Your Honor, I just want to clarify the purpose of this individual's note-taking. The judge studied Marcus briefly. Sir, are you causing a disturbance? No, Your Honor. Are you communicating with either party? No. The judge nodded once. Then he may remain seated. The gavel tapped lightly. Proceed. Cole stepped back, but something inside him had shifted from irritation to suspicion. Marcus's calm response hadn't eased him, it had unsettled him more. There was no hesitation, no defensiveness, just certainty. Cole returned to his position against the wall, but his thoughts had narrowed. Why was this man watching him so closely? Why take notes on routine testimony? It felt evaluative, and Cole didn't like being evaluated. The hearing resumed, but Cole's awareness remained divided. He noticed the angle of Marcus's posture, the precision of his handwriting, the fact that he occasionally glanced up only when Cole spoke. After another 10 minutes, Cole made a decision. He stepped forward again, this time louder. Sir, stand up. The room froze. Marcus slowly closed his notebook and stood. Yes, I need to see identification. A poser. On what grounds? Marcus asked, voice still controlled. Cole felt eyes across the courtroom settle on him. For verification, he replied. The defense attorney shifted uncomfortably. The prosecutor avoided eye contact. Marcus did not reach for his wallet. I'm not interfering, he said. I'm observing. Cole's jaw tightened. The judge leaned forward slightly. Officer Cole, unless there is a direct disruption, I see no basis. Cole cut in carefully but firmly. Your Honor, I'm maintaining courtroom security. There it was. Security. The word carried weight. The judge hesitated. Marcus remained standing calm, composed, unflinching. And in that moment what had begun as a glance had become a confrontation. Not because of noise, not because of disruption, but because Officer Grant Cole had decided that observation itself felt like a challenge, and he intended to regain control. The courtroom no longer felt routine. What had begun as a minor theft, hearing had shifted into something sharper, quieter but heavier. Every movement now carried tension. Marcus Bennett remained standing in the third row, notebook closed in his hand. Officer Grant Cole stood in the aisle facing him, posture rigid, authority radiating from his uniform. I asked for identification, Cole repeated, voice controlled but firm. Marcus did not raise his voice. Respectfully, officer, I'm seated in a public courtroom. I'm not involved in this case, and I'm not disrupting proceedings. The judge adjusted her glasses again, clearly uncomfortable. Officer Cole, she said carefully, unless there is specific cause. Cole kept his eyes on Marcus. Your Honor, I observed him taking detailed notes during testimony. I need to ensure he's not influencing or connected to the defendant. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Marcus's expression didn't change. I have not spoken to the defendant, he said evenly. And I have every right to observe. Cole took one step closer. You've been watching me since I took the stand. I was watching the testimony. That's not what it looked like. The room grew still. The defense attorney rose cautiously. Your Honor, is there a motion here? Because this seems unnecessary. Cole felt the shift. He could sense attention sliding away from the theft case and toward him. That only hardened his stance. I'm maintaining order, he said. Marcus's voice remained steady. Order isn't being disturbed. The judge leaned forward, fingers pressed together. Officer Cole, has this individual threatened anyone? No. Has he interrupted proceedings? No. Then I advise restraint. The word lingered in the air. Restraint. Cole's jaw tightened slightly. He felt challenged, not just by Marcus, but by the subtle implication that his judgment might be excessive. I don't need a disturbance to prevent one, Cole replied. Marcus held his gaze calmly. Prevention requires reasonable suspicion. A sharper silence fell. It was subtle, but the power dynamic had shifted. Marcus wasn't defiant, he wasn't emotional, but he was articulate and precise. Cole stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough that it forced attention. Produce identification. Now. Marcus didn't move. Under what lawful order? He asked quietly. That question landed harder than anything else. Several people in the gallery exchanged looks. Even the clerk had paused typing. Cole felt heat rise under his collar. He wasn't used to having his authority questioned in open court. Failure to comply with an officer's request can result in removal, Cole said. The judge spoke again, her tone firmer now. Officer Cole, if you believe removal is necessary, you may request security to escort him. But this will not disrupt the current proceedings further. There it was, permission, but not endorsement. Cole signaled toward a courthouse deputy standing near the door. The deputy hesitated for half a second before approaching. Sir, the deputy said quietly to Marcus, please step into the hallway. Marcus nodded once. He didn't resist. He didn't argue further. He simply walked toward the aisle, passing Officer Cole without expression. As he did, he spoke quietly low enough for only Cole to hear. Observation isn't intimidation. Cole didn't respond. The courtroom watched as Marcus exited calmly beside the deputy. The door closed, and for the first time that morning, the theft case was no longer the focus of the room. Officer Grant Cole returned to the back wall, arms folded again, but this time, the silence felt different. He had asserted control, but something about it didn't feel stable. It felt like the beginning of something that hadn't fully revealed itself yet. The hallway outside the courtroom was quieter than expected. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the echo of distant footsteps carried through the polished corridor. Marcus Bennett stood calmly beside the courthouse deputy who had escorted him out. His posture remained straight, expression neutral, notebook still in his hand. Officer Grant Cole stepped through the courtroom doors moments later. This won't take long, Cole said firmly. The deputy glanced between them, unsure whether this was routine or something more. Cole addressed Marcus directly. Why were you documenting my testimony? Marcus answered without hesitation. I told you. I was taking notes on the proceedings. For what purpose? For my own record. That's vague, Cole replied. It's accurate. Cole felt irritation rise again. The man's tone wasn't confrontational. It was controlled. Too controlled. You understand, Cole said slowly. That suspicious behavior in a courtroom can raise security concerns. Marcus met his eyes. What suspicious behavior? Cole didn't answer immediately. Instead, he shifted his framing. You maintained prolonged eye contact. You focused specifically on my testimony. You documented my responses in detail. Marcus nodded once. Yes, that's not typical behavior. It's not illegal either. The deputy shifted uncomfortably. The exchange had moved beyond simple clarification. Cole made a decision. I'm documenting this, he said. Your behavior could be interpreted as an attempt to intimidate an officer during testimony. Marcus didn't react emotionally. That interpretation would be inaccurate, based on your perspective, based on observable facts. The corridor felt tighter now. Cole stepped back slightly and pulled out his department-issued notebook. He began writing. Subject observed taking detailed notes during officer testimony, he muttered while jotting. Maintained sustained eye contact. Refused voluntary identification when requested. Marcus listened carefully. I did not refuse a lawful order, Marcus said calmly. You requested identification without articulating legal grounds. Cole paused for half a second before continuing to write. Subject argumentative. The word landed deliberately. Marcus noticed it. I asked for clarification, he corrected. Cole closed the notebook with a snap. You're free to leave, he said. For now. For now? Marcus asked. If further review determines interference, there may be follow-up. Marcus nodded once. Understood. The deputy stepped aside, clearly relieved the exchange was ending without physical escalation. Marcus turned and walked down the hallway toward the exit stairs. His pace was steady, no rush, no visible frustration. Cole watched him leave, but instead of letting it end there, Cole returned to the courtroom's side office and requested an incident addendum form. He began typing at a small desk near the clerk's station. The language shifted slightly from what had actually occurred. Individual appeared to fixate on officer testimony in a manner that could reasonably cause concern, demonstrated resistant body language when approached, questioned authority in a confrontational tone. Each phrase sounded official, structured, justifiable if not closely examined. Cole leaned back after finishing the preliminary entry. It felt solid on paper, clean, professional. Inside the courtroom, the hearing resumed as if nothing had happened. But a record now existed. A narrative had been introduced. Not loud, not dramatic, just subtle enough to appear procedural. And as Officer Grant Cole saved the report into the system, he believed he had secured his authority. What he didn't realize was that the spiral had already begun. Because once a false narrative enters the record, it doesn't stay small. It grows. By early afternoon, the theft hearing had concluded. But the tension from the earlier confrontation had not dissolved. Officer Grant Cole remained in the courthouse, finishing paperwork in a side administrative office. The air inside felt stale, thick with recycled ventilation and quiet concentration. Cole reopened the incident report he had filed earlier. For a moment, he stared at the language. Potential witness intimidation. Non-compliant posture. Questioned authority in a disruptive tone. He adjusted a sentence. Subject's actions may have influenced courtroom integrity. That line felt stronger, more official. He justified it to himself easily. Courts depended on order. Officers were responsible for maintaining it. If someone made him feel scrutinized or challenged during testimony, that alone could justify preventive action. He hit save. Across the building, Marcus Bennett had not left the courthouse. Instead, he stood near a public information desk, reviewing a printed copy of the hearing docket. His expression remained neutral, almost analytical. He made a phone call. Short, measured. Then he returned to the third floor, but this time he did not re-enter the courtroom. Back in the office, Cole received a message from courthouse security. "Officer Cole, we've logged your report," the dispatcher's voice said over the internal line. "Do you want the individual flagged?" Cole hesitated only briefly. "Yes," he replied. "Temporary watch notation. Just until further review. Copy that." It was subtle. A small digital mark in the courthouse system. But it shifted the situation from isolated irritation to documented suspicion. Minutes later, the courthouse deputy who had escorted Marcus earlier stepped into Cole's office. "Sir, just to confirm," the deputy said carefully, "are we charging him with anything?" Cole leaned back. "Not yet." But his behavior raised concerns. "I'm documenting it properly." The deputy nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his posture. "Understood." When the deputy left, Cole sat quietly for a moment. Something about the exchange had felt heavier than it should have. Still, he rationalized it. Procedure, prevention, professional instinct. Meanwhile, 2 floors below, Marcus sat on a bench in a quieter wing of the courthouse. He opened his notebook again, not the one Cole had seen earlier, but a second, slimmer one. Inside were structured entries, timestamps, descriptions, courtroom layout notes. He wrote, 10:47 a.m. Officer, initiated confrontation without cause. 10:49 a.m. No lawful basis articulated for ID request. 11:03 a.m. Incident report, suspected. His handwriting remained steady. Upstairs, Cole received a notification alert. Security system log update. Subject Bennett, flagged for review. Cole nodded slightly to himself. Control restored, or so he believed. But control built on interpretation rather than fact has a fragile foundation. Later that afternoon, the courthouse IT department automatically archived security footage from the hearing room. As part of routine protocol, copies were stored in the central system. And in another office, quiet, windowed, unassuming, 2 individuals reviewed daily courtroom activity logs. One of them paused at a timestamp. 10:47 a.m. "Zoom that," a woman's voice said calmly. The video displayed Officer Grant Cole stepping toward the 3rd row. No disruption visible. No raised voice from Marcus. Just a confrontation that had begun without clear provocation. Back upstairs, Cole closed his laptop and prepared to leave for the day, unaware that what he believed was a contained situation had already expanded beyond his awareness. The spiral wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was procedural, digital, documented, and it had only just begun to turn. The courthouse had emptied gradually as the afternoon stretched toward evening. Footsteps echoed less frequently in the corridors, and the atmosphere settled into a quieter, more reflective tone. Most officers had left for the day. Clerks finalized paperwork. The judges' chambers were dark, but on the fourth floor, in a small administrative review room with frosted glass panels, two individuals remained seated in front of a widescreen monitor. Special Agent Daniel Ross leaned back in his chair, arms crossed loosely, eyes fixed on paused footage from Courtroom B. Beside him sat investigator Elena Ruiz, posture straight, fingers resting on a tablet filled with digital notes. They had not entered the courtroom by accident. For months, they had been conducting periodic reviews of courthouse conduct under a federal oversight initiative focused on procedural integrity and civil compliance. Their presence in the building had been low profile, no announcements, no visible badges unless necessary. Routine observation, documentation, pattern assessment. Elena tapped the screen lightly. Replay from 10:46. The footage resumed. Officer Grant Cole stood at the witness stand, answering cross-examination. His demeanor appeared steady, confident. Then the camera angle captured him stepping down and slowing near the third row. Daniel watched carefully. "There," he said quietly. Cole leaned toward Marcus Bennett and initiated contact. No disruption preceded it. No visible disturbance. Just a decision. Elena zoomed in slightly. Audio from the body camera feed synced automatically. "You with the notebook, what are you writing?" Daniel exhaled softly. "Subject initiated contact without precipitating event," Elena noted, typing calmly. "Escalation initiated by officer." The footage continued. Marcus's posture remained composed. No raised voice. No threatening gestures. No interference. "Pause," Daniel said. Elena stopped the video at the exact moment Marcus asked, "Under what lawful order?" Daniel studied the frame. "That question shifted control," he observed. "Not aggressively. Legally." Elena nodded, and it triggered a defensive response. They resumed playback. The removal. The hallway exchange. The body language. No resistance. No disruption. No grounds for detainment beyond subjective discomfort. Elena switched to the internal report file that Officer Cole had submitted earlier that afternoon. She read silently for a moment. "Language inflation," she said. "He's framing observation as intimidation." Daniel leaned forward now. "That's how small distortions become formal accusations." Elena nodded again. "And once it's in the system, it carries weight." They sat quietly for a few seconds. Marcus Bennett's name appeared in the courthouse system flagged for temporary review as requested by Cole. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. "That's procedural escalation." Elena's tone remained calm. "Based on nothing measurable." Outside the review room, the courthouse lights dimmed gradually to evening settings. Inside, the tension sharpened not emotionally, but institutionally. Daniel closed the report window. "We'll continue observation," he said. "No intervention yet." Elena looked at him briefly. "You think he'll escalate further?" Daniel watched the final seconds of the footage again, the moment Cole snapped his notebook closed in the hallway. "He already believes he was challenged," Daniel replied quietly. "That mindset doesn't de-escalate on its own." Downstairs, unaware of the quiet review unfolding above him, Officer Grant Cole exited the building, confident that he had acted within his authority. But authority, under observation, changes its shape. And somewhere within the courthouse walls, two silent witnesses had begun documenting not just behavior, but pattern. The next morning, Officer Grant Cole arrived at the courthouse earlier than usual. The building was quieter at that hour, the marble floors reflecting pale morning light. He carried himself with the same rigid posture he always had, uniform pressed, badge polished. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Internally, however, he felt something different. Not doubt. Validation. He had replayed the previous day in his mind more than once. Each time, he arrived at the same conclusion. He had acted proactively. He had prevented potential disruption. He had done what officers were trained to do, maintain control before losing it. That belief steadied him. In the security office, two deputies were reviewing scheduling logs when Cole stepped in. "Morning," one of them said. Cole nodded. Everything clear from yesterday? Yeah, the deputy replied casually. Nothing major. Cole hesitated, then added, The individual from courtroom B. Bennett. Keep an eye if he reappears. The deputy nodded. Already flagged. That confirmation gave Cole a small sense of reinforcement. The system had backed him. The notation existed. His report had been logged without challenge. He moved to the workstation and reopened his incident addendum, reading through it again. The wording looked solid, professional, structured. He even added one more line. Officer perceived subject's sustained observation as potential pre-incident indicator. It sounded clinical, reasonable, defensible. He hit save again. In his mind, this wasn't personal. It was preventative policing within a courtroom environment. If someone focused intensely on an officer's testimony, it could imply strategy, influence, or interference. And if he had misread it, better safe than reactive. By mid-morning, Cole was scheduled to testify in another minor case. As he stood near the hallway outside courtroom C, he scanned the gallery before entering. Marcus Bennett was not there. For a moment, Cole felt an unexpected flicker of disappointment, almost like an unfinished exchange. Inside the courtroom, proceedings began smoothly. Cole delivered his testimony without interruption. No notebooks in the third row, no quiet observation that felt pointed. Everything ran clean. After stepping down from the stand, Cole found himself glancing toward the gallery again, almost reflexively. Empty. He folded his arms and stood near the rear wall. One of the prosecutors approached him quietly. Yesterday got a little tense, she said carefully. Cole shrugged lightly. Handled it. She nodded but didn't press further. That subtle restraint only reinforced his perception that he had acted appropriately. If there had been an issue, someone would have said so. But no one had. What he didn't see, 2 floors above, was investigator Elena Ruiz watching the updated incident log in real time. She noted the additional language inserted that morning. Escalation in phrasing, she said quietly to Daniel Ross. Daniel reviewed the new line. Perceived pre-incident indicator, he read aloud. He's building justification layers. Downstairs, Cole felt settled. Control maintained. Authority intact. The absence of immediate consequence had strengthened his internal narrative. He had been right to act. He had read the situation correctly. But confidence built on unchecked interpretation can become insulation. And insulation, when pressure builds quietly around it, eventually cracks. Officer Grant Cole walked out of courtroom C that afternoon. Certain of one thing, he believed the situation was over. He had no idea it was about to move beyond his control entirely. By late afternoon, the courthouse had settled into a quieter rhythm. Most cases were wrapping up, and hallways echoed only with the occasional shuffle of papers or distant conversation. Officer Grant Cole had returned to his usual post near the security office, confident that the incident with Marcus Bennett had concluded. He reviewed his reports one final time, satisfied with their detail, each phrase carefully chosen to justify his perspective. Everything appeared controlled. Everything appeared contained. Unbeknownst to him, 2 silent observers had been documenting every move, not for procedural oversight alone, but to intervene when necessary. Special Agent Daniel Ross and Investigator Elena Ruiz sat together in the review room on the 4th floor, eyes fixed on multiple monitors. The recordings from courtroom B were playing in real time, synced with security camera feeds and Cole's own report entries. Pause it there, Elena said, stopping the footage at the moment Cole had closed his notebook in the hallway. Daniel leaned forward, his expression unreadable. He's convinced himself he was right, he murmured. He doesn't realize how misinterpreted his actions appear. Elena tapped her tablet, pulling up the official courthouse code regarding visitor conduct and officer authority. Everything he cited is technically defensible, but contextually it's misapplied, she noted. The individual didn't interfere, not once. Meanwhile, Cole adjusted his tie in front of a small mirror in the security office. He exhaled slowly, confident that his authority remained unquestioned. He had followed procedure. He had documented behavior. He had maintained order. In his mind, the situation was a textbook example of proactive policing. A soft knock at the office door broke his focus. "Officer Cole?" a calm voice asked. Cole turned to see a man standing in the doorway. He was formally dressed, badge clipped subtly to his suit jacket. Daniel Ross stepped inside, accompanied by Elena Ruiz. Both carried the quiet authority of individuals accustomed to being unchallenged. "Special Agent Ross," Cole said, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. "How can I help you?" Daniel's gaze was steady. "You can stop writing your own narrative for now," he said evenly. "We're here to review the events of yesterday." Cole's confidence wavered slightly, replaced by a flicker of unease. He straightened, attempting composure. "I followed procedure," Elena interrupted gently but firmly. "We're not here to question procedure. We're here to clarify facts." Cole's hand drifted toward his notebook. "I've documented everything accurately." Daniel raised a hand. "We have footage, security logs, your report. We can compare all three and resolve any discrepancies immediately." For the first time, Cole realized he was no longer in control. The power dynamic he had assumed was unshakable had shifted silently, almost imperceptibly. The hallway outside grew still as a few late staff, and observers noticed the agents. Their presence carried weight, not through noise or threat, but through quiet certainty. Cole understood now that this was not a casual review. This was oversight in action. And Marcus Bennett, sitting quietly nearby in the gallery, watched as the situation unfolded. He had been calm, collected, and silent. But now, with the investigators intervening, the balance had shifted decisively. Cole's chest tightened as he realized the situation he had thought he controlled was no longer his to manage. The intervention had begun, and it would be decisive. The courtroom had returned to a tense stillness. Officer Grant Cole stood near the rear wall, hands clasped behind his back, eyes shifting between the judge, the clerk, and the two figures who had entered quietly, Special Agent Daniel Ross and Investigator Elena Ruiz. Their presence was calm, professional, but it carried a weight that Cole could feel in the pit of his stomach. "Officer Cole," Daniel began, his voice measured, "we are here to review yesterday's events, including your interactions with Mr. Bennett." Cole straightened, adjusting his uniform instinctively. "Yes, sir. I followed procedure and documented everything." Elena interjected, flipping open her tablet. "We have the courtroom footage, body cam records, and security logs. We also have your incident report. We'll review them together." The judge, sensing the shift in the courtroom, leaned forward slightly. "This review will be factual. No interruptions, please." Daniel nodded and tapped a command on his tablet. The large monitor behind them flickered to life, displaying a paused moment from the previous day. Cole approaching Marcus Bennett in the gallery, notebook in hand, voice firm but calm. "Play," Daniel instructed. The footage ran. Every subtle movement, every gesture was displayed in high definition. Marcus's posture remained neutral, his hands folded around his notebook. His pen never moved during the officer's approach. He said nothing that could be interpreted as threatening. Cole felt his confidence falter slightly. He had believed his perception, his sense of potential intimidation was valid, but the footage told a different story. "Pause," Elena said. She tapped on the timeline, highlighting Cole's initial approach. "Notice here. No raised voice, no disruption, no obstruction. Yet your report labeled this as potential intimidation." Cole swallowed. I perceived," Daniel cut in, calm but firm. "Perception is not fact, Officer Cole. Observation can differ from intent." The courtroom felt heavier with each word. Even the gallery of onlookers had grown silent. Every eye followed the unfolding evidence. Cole's internal narrative, the justification he had clung to, was now unraveling in real time. Elena switched the footage to the hallway interaction, where Marcus had been escorted briefly. Cole's notebook was visible, closed sharply in the video. Marcus spoke quietly, questioning the lawful basis for the identification request. No argument. No threat. Just questions. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "This is critical. The individual did not resist. He did not intimidate. He maintained composure. Yet your report amplified the perceived threat." Cole's throat tightened. He had documented carefully, structured each line to justify intervention. But the evidence exposed the discrepancies. Each word of his report weighed against the objective reality. Elena highlighted timestamps and cross-referenced them with security camera logs. Every entry here, Officer Cole, can be verified or contradicted by independent data. Your narrative does not align with what actually occurred. The judge adjusted her glasses, nodding. This is why accurate reporting is essential. Authority without adherence to facts undermines trust. Cole's hand drifted to his notebook, but faltered. He understood that the illusion of control he had maintained for days had collapsed in minutes. Marcus, seated calmly in the gallery, observed the silent shift of power. He had remained neutral, composed, and quiet, yet the revelation of truth now commanded the room. The evidence had unfolded, and with it, the authority Cole had assumed as unquestionable began to crumble before him. The spiral had reached its critical point, and the courtroom waited. The courtroom had grown heavy with anticipation. Officer Grant Cole stood near the rear wall, posture rigid but tense, as Special Agent Daniel Ross and investigator Elena Ruiz methodically reviewed the evidence on the large monitor. Every movement, every detail from the prior day's incident was replayed in high-definition clarity. Cole's own report lay open before him. The words he had meticulously chosen now starkly contrasted with the footage. Daniel's voice broke the silence. Officer Cole, the body cam clearly shows Mr. Bennett maintaining a neutral stance. He asked questions, legally justified questions, but did not resist or threaten. Your report states otherwise. Cole swallowed, his confidence cracking. I interpreted. Elaborate perception cannot replace fact, Elena interrupted firmly. You labeled observation as intimidation. You framed neutrality as resistance. These discrepancies have serious implications. The judge, who had been observing silently, adjusted her glasses. Officer Cole, it is clear there is a divergence between your documentation and the evidence. How do you account for this? Cole fumbled slightly, trying to maintain composure. I acted on my professional judgment. I was ensuring courtroom safety. Daniel shook his head slightly. Professional judgment is important, but facts matter first. You escalated a non-disruptive situation into a recorded incident, labeling lawful behavior as threatening. That is the core issue here. The gallery, filled with a few late observers, watched as Cole's composure visibly eroded. Even the courthouse clerk paused typing, sensing the gravity of the proceedings. Elena tapped her tablet, pulling up security footage of the hallway interaction. Cole had insisted Marcus had resisted. The video showed Marcus walking calmly beside the deputy, his notebook closed, hands at his sides, expression neutral. Cole's jaw tightened. He had believed he was acting within his authority. The confidence he had carried for days now seemed hollow. Daniel continued. Internal Affairs has been notified. The discrepancies in your report, combined with the video evidence, mean a formal review of your conduct is necessary. Administrative leave is recommended during the investigation. The words hit Cole like a physical blow. Administrative leave. His authority suspended. The room seemed to shrink around him. All the control he had believed he maintained built over years of experience, and countless courtroom appearances had evaporated in minutes. Marcus Bennett, sitting quietly in the gallery, offered no expression. Calm, composed, dignified. Yet the weight of his quiet endurance now contrasted sharply with Cole's unraveling presence. The judge leaned forward. Officer Cole, your role is essential to maintaining order. However, order must be based on fact, not perception. Authority that ignores evidence undermines trust and damages the integrity of the courtroom. Cole nodded mutely, the words sinking in. He realized that every step he had taken from approaching Marcus in the gallery to filing the incident report had been amplified by his assumptions, not reality. Outside the courtroom, whispers spread. Colleagues exchanged glances. The courthouse, normally a place of routine, now felt charged with the tension of accountability. For the first time in years, Cole faced the uncomfortable truth. Authority is not a shield from oversight. Expertise and confidence cannot justify misinterpretation, and the collapse of his perceived control was absolute. As the judge called for a short recess, Cole remained rooted to the spot, processing the inevitability. His decisions, once unquestioned, were now subject to scrutiny, and the consequences would follow swiftly. The courtroom had shifted. The balance of power had changed, and Cole could no longer hide behind his badge. The recess was brief, but for Officer Grant Cole it felt like hours. He remained near the back of the courtroom, hands clasped tightly, trying to steady the internal turmoil that had been building since the evidence review began. The polished floors and muted sunlight through the tall windows offered no comfort. Every corner of the room seemed to echo the silent judgment he now felt. Special Agent Daniel Ross and Investigator Eleanor Ruiz moved efficiently during the break, reviewing additional footage and cross-referencing timestamps with Cole's report. They spoke quietly but with precision, ensuring no detail went unnoticed. Each minor discrepancy in the report was catalogued and prepared for discussion when proceedings resumed. Cole knew what was coming next. Internal affairs, or at least an official inquiry, would follow. He understood the weight of procedural misconduct, not in theory, but in practice. Every line of his previous report was now under scrutiny, every phrasing dissected for bias, interpretation, and accuracy. When the session resumed, Daniel and Elena presented their findings to the judge first, summarizing with clarity and neutrality. The judge's expression remained firm yet measured as she turned her gaze to Cole. "Officer Cole," she began, voice deliberate, "your report contains statements inconsistent with documented evidence. You characterized lawful behavior as potential intimidation, and your internal narrative amplified perceived threats. Can you explain this discrepancy?" Cole swallowed, trying to form words. "Your Honor, I acted based on my experience. I interpreted behavior in real time as potentially threatening. My intention was to maintain order and safety." Daniel stepped forward. "Intention alone does not justify misrepresentation. The evidence shows no disruptive or threatening behavior from Mr. Bennett. Your report escalated the situation beyond the facts." The courtroom was quiet. Observers, though few, leaned slightly forward, sensing the unfolding accountability. The judge adjusted her glasses, tapping the edge of the bench lightly. "Officer Cole," she said, voice firm, "maintaining order requires both authority and adherence to facts. Misinterpretation that leads to false documentation constitutes procedural failure. The matter will be formally reviewed, and your actions during this incident will be subject to further investigation." Cole nodded mutely, feeling the gravity of each word. For years his badge had been a symbol of control, a mark of authority in every courtroom, every hallway, every interaction. Now that symbol felt hollow. Every decision, every documented interpretation had consequences beyond perception. Marcus Bennett remained seated in the gallery, calm and composed, observing silently. He had not spoken. He had not reacted. Yet his mere presence and adherence to truth had become a mirror reflecting Cole's misjudgments. Daniel and Elena catalogued the final discrepancies in Cole's report, ensuring the internal record accurately reflected events. Cole understood that this process, methodical and precise, left little room for personal justification or ambiguity. The judge continued, directing Cole to cooperate fully with the inquiry and maintain transparency during the investigation. Each instruction reinforced the shift from unchallenged authority to accountability, a shift that Cole now faced directly, without recourse to assumption or perception. By the end of the session, Cole was left with a stark realization. Authority without responsibility is fragile, and unchecked perception can lead to personal and professional consequences. The courtroom, once a space where he dictated order, had become the place where he had to confront his own accountability. The weight of that truth settled heavily on his shoulders. It was a moment of reckoning. The final day of the review had arrived, and the courthouse was quieter than usual. Morning light streamed through the tall windows of courtroom B, illuminating the polished wood benches and the gleaming judge's bench. Officer Grant Cole stood near the rear wall, uniform neat, badge in place, but the tension that had gripped him for days had not entirely dissipated. He knew this session would determine the outcome of the inquiry. Special Agent Daniel Ross and Investigator Eleanor Ruiz arrived early, their presence calm and authoritative. They carried tablets and folders containing the compiled evidence, security footage, timestamps, report discrepancies, and analysis of Cole's incident documentation. The weight of their observation was palpable, though they maintained professional neutrality. The judge entered promptly, her gavel tapping lightly to call the session to order. Cole stepped forward when directed. His posture was erect, but there was a subtle rigidity in his shoulders, a reflection of the internal reckoning he had been forced to face. "Officer Cole," the judge began, voice measured, "we are here to review the incident involving Mr. Marcus Bennett and your conduct during the proceedings. Evidence has been reviewed, cross-referenced, and verified. We will proceed with transparency and clarity." Cole nodded, silently acknowledging the gravity of the situation. He felt the eyes of the few observers in the gallery, each a quiet reminder of accountability. Daniel initiated the presentation. Video footage played alongside Cole's incident report. Each discrepancy was highlighted with timestamps, audio annotations, and objective notes. Elena supplemented the visuals with cross-referenced courthouse logs. Every instance where Cole's perception had diverged from factual behavior was displayed clearly. Marcus had maintained composure, had asked questions respectfully, and had neither disrupted nor intimidated. Cole's throat tightened as he followed along. Every word he had written, every interpretation he had justified in his mind, was now exposed under the lens of factual review. He realized how easily perception had shaped narrative, and how narrative, once documented, could distort reality. The judge paused the presentation. "Officer Cole," she said, "the evidence demonstrates a misalignment between reported observations and factual behavior. While your intentions were to maintain order, the documentation inaccurately represented the subject's actions. This is a critical lesson in procedural accuracy and accountability." Cole exhaled slowly, absorbing the weight of the ruling. The internal reflection was as significant as the official admonishment. Authority alone had never been enough. Order and power were meaningless without adherence to truth and fact. Marcus Bennett, present in the gallery, remained calm and composed. His quiet patience had revealed discrepancies, not through confrontation, but by upholding his own integrity. Cole now understood the subtle power of observation, honesty, and restraint. The judge concluded, assigning Cole mandatory procedural review and a temporary oversight period, emphasizing that proper documentation, fact-based reporting, and measured authority were paramount in maintaining courtroom integrity. As the gavel fell, Cole walked toward the exit, shoulders slightly lighter, carrying a newfound awareness. Authority, he realized, was not a shield against accountability. It was a responsibility that demanded precision, clarity, and humility. Marcus left shortly after, quietly confident, having navigated the situation with composure and integrity. The courtroom returned to normal, but the lessons endured. Perception must never replace fact, and true authority is measured not by control, but by justice and restraint. Cole paused for a moment at the courthouse doors, reflecting on the past week. The confrontation, the review, and the intervention had all exposed weaknesses in his own assumptions. He understood now that real professionalism required not just authority, but careful observation, fairness, and accountability. The courthouse was silent around him, but inside, Cole felt the quiet stirrings of insight and the slow, steady growth of understanding. This incident would not define him negatively, it would shape him into a more conscious and responsible officer. And as he stepped into the morning light, the final chapter of the ordeal concluded, leaving both reflection and resolve in its wake.